How's everybody this morning? Hey, it's warmer than it was yesterday. It's wet, but it's warmer at least. All right, my name is Zachary Bennett, as he said. Like you guys, I am a business owner, and business owners wear many hats. But my chief hat that I wear is that I am a business executive that works in the Atlanta area in the field of marketing. Okay, I'm the president of a marketing agency. I'm also the chief marketing officer for several businesses that are in the area, and business coach to several smaller businesses that are also around the southeast. In addition to that, I am a speaker. I do speaking engagements like this all the time across the region. But in addition to that, and one of the things that really applies today is I'm a podcast host. So this is the podcast that I have that we do. It's called Straight Shot Podcast. It is on how marketing interacts with everyday life. So we'll be talking to you about podcasting from experience today, and I will use Straight Shot as the guinea pig when I'm explaining lots of different things today. All right, now, Straight Shot is sponsored by the agency that I work for, which is Reformation Productions. Reformation Productions is a marketing agency, which means that we partner with other businesses to help them to communicate themselves in a more efficient and effective manner. That's what our job is. Okay, so it sponsors Straight Shot, and when we get into how podcasts work and how you monetize them and that sort of thing, that will come into play. So our approach for today, we're going to talk about business and podcasting. We'll go through what is a podcast, how have podcasts started to become so popular, how businesses can utilize podcasts, why you might consider producing a podcast yourself, how to produce a podcast yourself, then how to promote it, what's the investment, what's it going to take to do it, how to procure that investment, and then what are some challenges that are common to people that do podcasting. And then at the end, we'll have some Q&A where you can ask me some questions. Now, we'll kind of have this funnel approach where we'll start big picture going through history and purpose, and then we'll narrow it down to the question why, followed by the question how, and then we'll get to the Q&A. So, does that work for everybody? Kind of go from big picture down? I hope so, because I've already built the PowerPoint. So, all right. All right, so the history. This young man was extremely common in the 80s. Every kid was carrying around a device called a Walkman. Anybody in here old enough to remember Walkman? Some of you are with me, yeah. So, loved my Walkman, right? And so did everybody else. So everybody, all ages, creeds, colors, religions, everybody used the Walkman. Now one of the problems that you had with the Walkman is you could see it's rather bulky and everybody's carrying it around. And you had these. Anybody remember what these are? These are cassette tapes. And if you wanted to stop listening from Whitney Houston, you had to change it to a new tape, which meant you also had to carry out one of these. So you had your Walkman strapped on with your headphones in, you had to carry a case if you wanted to make a change. Well, things progressed. 1984, we had the Sony Discman. And that was great, except for the fact that if you shook it or didn't hold it the right way, it would skip. And you could still change your songs, which meant you still had to have a case. And then this young lady happened. Anybody know who this is besides Lisa? Mm-hmm. This is Lisa. And Lisa is important because
daughter of Steve Jobs.
This is her dad. Her dad is Steve Jobs, who of course was the founder of Apple. And what he did is he saw that his little girl was carrying all of this stuff and was very uncomfortable, and he decided that he was going to develop something, because he could, that would carry 1,000 songs in her pocket. And hence came the original iPod, 2001. It featured a groundbreaking wheel, an LCD screen. You could hook it into your computer, and you could download songs to it because this was the days of Napster. You could download songs to it and keep it all in a very compact and easy, convenient way. Now, people started to use this device to develop original content. So you had talk shows, entertainment reviews, radio shows were all started to be made as original content to put on the iPod. And that is where podcast comes from. It is a broadcast on the iPod. All right, so a podcast is a digital audio file that is made available on the internet for downloading onto a computer or mobile device. Typically, it's in a series. So you will have a series of episodes that people can subscribe to automatically. Now, you can download it directly to your computer through different podcast services. iTunes was really big when this first came out. And then we got the iPhone in 2007. And that, of course, changed the world. Because now you had smartphone apps. And those apps could automatically download it for you, and you had it with you all the time. So, podcasts have always held a special spot in the society of people's growing busy lives because convenience and choice. All right, so having the choice to change what you listen to and having the convenience of having it in your pocket already where you don't have to carry all of this extra stuff was very significant in the growth of the podcast. They've been around for around 20 years, and then all of a sudden they started becoming extremely popular again with the outcome of the smartphone, podcast apps, and the little home speaker known as Alexa. Which now everybody has Google has one, and everybody starts to copy it. But you could just say, hey Alexa, play so-and-so podcast, and it will. It's become extremely popular and moving along podcasts. So technology moves us forward because it provides choice and convenience, as I said. So podcasts are topic specific. So everybody that was in here that was talking about a certain niche that you're looking at, that's exactly what this is for. It's not unlike a book in that you can listen to it, pause, and come back to it. Whereas when you listen to the radio, you can't pause radio. Well, you can at home if you're watching it on TV. But it has an entertainment show quality that books don't have. So there's a Hollywood aspect to it as well. That also went into the popularity of podcasts. They're like audiobooks, journalist reports, TV shows, and talk shows that you always have with you as long as you have your phone. They're also hip. They're cool. People build communities around podcasts within social media. They're shareable, and that makes it viral, which is very important in today's society. So, very useful tools. Now, podcasts, like I said, they're very niche. They are very good for targeted consumer profiles. If you're looking for a specific type of person, people in the hotel industry, for example, that's exactly what these are for. You're looking for moms, you're looking for homeschoolers, you're looking for whoever it is. That's how podcasts thrive, is because they are targeted towards a specific audience. Now, that being said, there are, in general, these are some of the more popular ones that exist right now. Obviously, I'm not putting them all up. So, and they range wildly as to what types they are. Has anybody heard of any of these? Which ones do you know?
Joe Rogan.
Yep.
Dave Ramsey.
Tech Talks.
Yep.
The Bar.
Joe Rogan's podcast is so important, he is on TV.
Yeah.
So not only is it a video podcast, it's a video podcast that's broadcast on normal TV. Now, there's something that's out there for everyone. The categories that people podcast in: news and politics, society and culture, comedy, health, special interests and hobbies, education, stories, both fiction and nonfiction, and business. Business is one of the top 3 categories for podcast. Formats that they come in. A lot of people use interviews. They'll interview other experts, and then you get to listen in on whatever that interview is. Reviews, where they're reviewing movies or books or whatever they might be reviewing. Open discussion with people. teaching, and then storytelling as well. So those are some of the formats that people use. Now, some statistics for the left brain guy in the room. So 70% of Americans have heard the term podcasting. 51%, that's over half, have listened to a podcast. This is today. 32% of Americans listen to at least one show a month, and 22% listen on a weekly basis. Now, if you don't know anything about how statistics work, this is not very impressive to you. But in the world of business and marketing, these are good numbers, okay? All right, smartphones are what's driven the popularity of podcasting. This is 2014, that's 2017. The purple line, that's smartphones. So that's what's happened to it since it started. 157% increase in those 3 years. 80% of people that listen to podcasts listen to most of it, if not the entire thing. So there's lots of things where, they'll read the front page of the book, but they don't read the whole thing. Most people that are engaged in podcasting, they listen to the majority of the program. They may cut it off in the end where you start talking about thanks mom, thank you my dad, whatever your credits are at the time. It is pretty evenly split between men and women, 44%, 56%. And here again, you can start seeing the percentage of growth, 2013, 2019. It is steadily going up and expected to only get higher. So, some perceptions of people when it comes to advertising and business, because we're talking about podcasting and business today. So, 83% think that if the host is authentic and natural when delivering the ads do not bother them. The sponsors fit in well with the content of the show. The 69% agreed that podcasts made them aware of new products that they weren't aware of. 62% after listening to the podcast could tell you what the brand was that sponsored the podcast. So the important things here to note are when you're making your podcast. These are very important elements if you want someone to sponsor your podcast, okay? Or if you want to sponsor somebody else's podcast, you need to make sure that the host comes across as authentic and smooth, and that the content, whatever it is that you are trying to, either the company is sponsoring you or you are sponsoring the podcast, it needs to fit with the topic of the podcast. Now, revenue is expected to exceed $1 billion by 2021. So this is the business of podcasting, why it's become a buzz. Okay, it's steadily going up. This year, it's almost $680 million spent in podcasting. It's supposed to go up to $265 next year. And they'll on it from there. So people are starting to pay attention to podcasting as far as business is concerned. Now, speaking of that, how can businesses use podcasting? Well, the first thing that you can do is be a guest on a show that already exists. Okay? This is me. I was a guest on Business Radio X, which is a local podcast that's in they're everywhere, but this one was in the Atlanta area. So what do you do when you're there? Well, you go there to promote your business. You're on there, they're asking you questions, they're interviewing you, that's the format of the show, and you talk about your business. You also talk about whatever your process is, if the process is something that you're selling. So basically you're talking about your business and why somebody should choose to do business with you. So your next question is, okay, how do I become invited? Well, most of them have some way, once you listen to the podcast or you go to their website or whatever, there's a way for you to be considered to be on the show. For Straight Shot, we have a phone number that is dedicated to, it's an extension of our phone number that is dedicated to receiving those calls. We also have an email address that is dedicated for people that are interested in becoming on the show. So you can go to whatever the podcast is, find out what that is, and make a pitch as to why you would be a good guest to be on their show. The other thing that you can do, that I did, is when I went on the show, I didn't go by myself, I brought one of my customers, one of my clients. And so what that did is it made it where I went on the show, I was talking about who I was and what I did, and I had a client with me that was a testimonial for who I was and what I did. So you can think out of the box when you're being on these shows and what you're going to do. It also was good faith between me and him because he then got to talk about his business and what he did on the show. So just another idea as far as being on other people's podcasts and how that can work for your business. The other thing you can do is sponsor a podcast as a business. So this, again, is Business Radio X. They are sponsored by Subaru. You can see in the background, they have Subaru in the studio. It's also on their microphones. So there's several different ways. Decor is one of the ways that you can sponsor a podcast. Giveaways is another one. You probably see this a lot on YouTube. You know, so-and-so gave me such and such awesome product, which I'm going to give to whoever answers this question right in my audience, right? So giving some sort of giveaway. I'm going to give away this remote. So, you know, the...
Don't work.
Right, that's a very good point. I should give something else away. But basically, you as a business would provide me with whatever your latest widget is, and then I would talk about the widget and then give it to one of the people that are in my audience.
Talk about the student decor again.
There's several areas within the studio that you can sponsor. This backdrop, you'll notice it says Business Radio X, of course, but it also has the name and the logo of their sponsor. So that way, when people come in there, they see it. It's also a video podcast, so they see it on the show when they watch it. And there's lots of other things that you can do in that area. Anything that you could put on the table. There's two audiences for a podcast. I'm going off script. There's two audiences. One is the people watching or listening to the show. The other is the people in the show. A lot of times people will invite people onto their podcast because they want said person to be their customer. For example, if you are a doctor and you want referrals from other doctors, you can have a medical show and then invite another doctor that would not normally talk to you because they're busy, but they kind of like the idea of being on TV, right? So there are your audience also. So anything you can do to make that area special speaks to that. Everybody wants, not everybody, a lot of people want to be on TV. So there's a Hollywood aspect as well. Ads is another thing. A lot of podcasts, just like normal television, they have ads that are in the middle of their show. Beginning, middle, and end. Now, most of podcasts are a lot more picky than television and radio shows about what they let on their show. So there's a limited number of spots, and it has to be something relative to the show. But you can place an ad in somebody's podcast. Reads is another thing. A read and an ad are slightly different. An ad is pre-produced. Somebody will make a spot that will be played on the show. A read is when the host simply says today's show is sponsored by so-and-so. Please check them out. It'll last 15, 20 seconds. That's it. Okay? And the cost of those are obviously different because one has production cost. The other thing that you can do as a business is host a podcast, right? This is our studio, a little behind the scenes of us doing it. This is my wife. She is the co-host of the podcast. So that is another option which we will go into depth about here in a minute. You can also sponsor and host multiple different podcasts. So you can have, as a business, you can have a different podcast for a different target audience or for a different interest. So you can have one podcast that's targeted towards hotels, another one that's targeted towards restaurants, another one, because the audience is different on every one. So that's the thing, again, about being very targetable. You can zero in and do a show for different audiences. You can have more than one. A few businesses that sponsor podcasting now, just so you kind of know the community that's out there. Some of these you've heard of. Audible is owned by Amazon. Blue Apron, does anybody know what Blue Apron is?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are people that are very popular right now in the podcasting world as far as sponsoring other people's podcasts. These businesses have their own podcast. So GE puts on their own. McDonald's puts on their own. Sephora has their own. This is ZipRecruiter. They actually hired this guy, you know who this is?
Shark Tank.
Shark Tank. They hired him to host the show for them so they get the little celebrity buzz going as well. But the point of all of this is business is starting to recognize podcasting as an opportunity that's a lot cheaper than advertising on television. All right, why would you bother with a podcast? Either being on a podcast or having your own. Well, it gives you an opportunity to connect with your audience. A lot of businesses, you have a business and you never really talk to the people. This is a very personal way for you to make eye contact through the ears with, with your audience. And it's a very personal relationship. Your audience starts to feel like they know you because you are being transparent with them, you're talking directly to them, which is something that you generally can't do unless you have an outlet to do it. It's just like being a keynote speaker, right? When I talk to you, I generally look you right in the face and feel like you are talking to me because you are. It's the same sort of thing with the podcast. Another reason why you would do it is reaching potential customers. Customers that you wouldn't run into otherwise can find you. So that's another reason why you would do it. Another reason is further building relationships. This, again, I was on a podcast show and I brought in 3 of my clients and we had a conversation right there on the show. It helps you build relationships with existing clients that you already have to feature them on your show. It also gives you an authoritative presence. When you host a show, you are spreading your knowledge to other people. And of course, there's lots of benefits to thought leadership that are passed down over the years. Early stages is you generally start to have more inquiries about what it is that you do. Second stage is your sales cycle will start to go faster. You'll start to have higher closing rates as a business owner. And then the last one is you will have increased loyalty with your customers because they like saying, my guy has this show. And you'll end up having higher lifetime value as a business because you've established that you have a show. So those are some things that are good with podcasting and thought leadership. Now, it also provides you with a platform. If you have something to say, it gives you a podium so that you can then express yourself and get your ideas out there. Increases brand awareness. That's what every business wants. Every business wants this space in your consumer's mind. So when they think of whatever your business is, you are the company that comes to mind. That's the goal. And having a podcast helps to increase awareness of your brand in other people. The other thing is it's highly engaging. Because it's digital and it lives in the digital stratosphere, it's very well engaged with social media, people talking about it, sharing it, tweeting it, etc. It's highly engaging with your customers. Now, back to the left side of the brain. 69% of people agreed that podcast ads made them more aware of products and services. That's reason enough, right? And then there's the fact that it's simple to do. Having a podcast is not a difficult process, which we will go over.
I have a question.
Sure.
You talk about the podcast providing a platform.
Mm-hmm.
What major difference is there between the blog and the podcast in terms of the platform? Because
There-
the blog does give you that platform.
Yes, but people don't subscribe to blogs. They don't keep blogs in their pocket and listen to it when they're on the treadmill. That's the major difference. Blogs don't have an entertainment factor that a podcast would, whether it's video or audio, either one. People go out jogging, they're not going to go out jogging reading your blog. So again, convenience.
The time you spend reading when you have a lot of stuff to do with podcasts.
Right.
You can do a lot of stuff listening while listening to the podcast.
Right. Yep. Now, the next blogging started, and then there was what's called a vlog, which is a video log. Podcasting is the next step right now. All right, so how do you sponsor a podcast? Say you have a business and you want to do podcasting, but you don't want to have your own. What can you do with somebody else's? Well, the first thing that you need to do is listen to the show. Because there's 2 things you have to make sure. One, you have to make sure that you are relative to the show. The other thing that you have to do is make sure that when you contact them and they ask you if you want to listen to the show, you can say yes. Because if you don't, you're likely to offend them, and that's bad. That does not help your chances of being on the show. Now, most people that have a podcast will have some sort of online sign up if their podcast has been around for a while. Okay? Now, we have one. It's patreon.com/straightshot. Has anybody heard of Patreon? Okay. Patreon, for those of you that haven't heard of it, is a way that artists get paid for whatever that they create. Okay? So it's also a way that podcasts use to monetize their platforms. So at this point, we're talking about sponsorship. So a business can come on and sponsor Straight Shot for $75 a month. And then there's a list of whatever they receive as a sponsor of the show. And then there's advertising, which is separate than general sponsorship. Again, you have to look at the details of what all that means in order to be signed up and be on the show. So you would set whatever those are, and you can use a platform like Patreon to help you kind of communicate to your public what those are. The other thing, to contact them, you can call them. If they don't have one of these, you can call them or you can email them. The idea is that you're going to have to reach out to them, and most of them will take your call because you're talking about sponsoring their show. They will want to vet you and make sure that your business does line up. And then, of course, there's terms that you have to talk about. But most of them will indeed talk to you. It's not a complicated process. Now, the other thing that they can do, where we talked before about studio decor, is there's lots of different custom packaging that you can put together. For us, this is to be listed as a sponsor. You're mentioned on there, you're mentioned on the website. This is actually having an ad that runs on the podcast show. Then there's custom packages where you work something out. So because there's so many options, these are generally not listed on a site. You'll say, hey, I want to sponsor your show. They'll say, well, we have the opportunity where our backdrop is available if you would like to, or whatever it may be. So there's lots of different things. There's listings on the website, which is very important. Being in the credits, you used to see it on TV. Today's show is brought to you by blah, blah, blah. Well, that's the same sort of thing. 30 to 60 second spots, that's usually how long the advertising lasts. Reads, which I mentioned before, studio decor, lots of different things you could do. For example, this being up here is because SCORE is sponsoring this workshop. Okay? Takeovers. Now, giveaways we talked about earlier. Takeovers is when you would have somebody come in and take over somebody else's channel. So either, GE would come in and take over Straight Shot for an entire episode, or they would hire us to go to GE and take over whatever they're doing. Lots of different things that can be done on location broadcast where I would actually go to a customer's business and do my show from their location.
I've got just a sec.
Sure.
The studio decor, who provides that?
That would be something that usually they would provide it, but you would pay for it because there's a cost involved. So usually you can't go, here, I have this, will you put it up? Usually it'll be made specifically for whatever it is, and they'll facilitate all of that themselves. Again, podcast revenue expectations. This is from a different survey. Between 16 and 2020 is expected to go up 290%, which means that these opportunities are going to go away fast. There's something about being an early adopter, and then there's being on time, and then there's being late. All right. Right now, podcasting is on the way up. If you're going to get involved, do it before it passes you by, on one end or the other. All right, so how do you produce a podcast? We've talked about the different ways that you can sponsor a show. How do you do one yourself? Well, there's several different areas. We're going to break this down and talk about pre-production first. So this is before you ever get in the show. You have to have setup, which you only have to do one time. First thing you have to do is determine your goals. What is this show going to be about? All right, now your goals are fed by your desires, what you believe, what you think is valuable, and they are supported by the purpose of your business. When we talk about business podcasts, it is an branch of whatever your main business is. It is supporting and promoting whatever your main business is. So you have to determine for yourself, what are some of the goals that that I have for it. So, what do you want to accomplish with having a podcast? How is having a podcast going to support your main brand? What should this effort mean to your audience? When you come out with a podcast, what do you want that to mean to the people that are listening to you? Also, what is it going to mean to the people that you already work with? So internally, you have to think about them too. Those all go into your determining of your goals. Then you have to set up whatever your strategy is going to be for having it. Now, there's lots of pieces that go into this. How are you going to structure the show? Is it going to be interview-based, open discussion? Are you going to do red table talk? Anybody know what that is? Hey, a couple people. So, whatever sort of structure are you going to have for the show? What is the theme of the show going to be? What is it going to be about? What's the feeling that you're going to give off? Who are the players? Are you going to do it by yourself? Are you going to have a co-host? Are you going to have people that go man on the street and do interviews? Who all is going to be involved in putting on the show? And then what is the process? So you're going to do the research. You're going to write the script. Somebody else is going to talk. You have to think through how it is actually going to work as a show, the same as you would on with a normal TV show. And then you have to think of, okay, I have a show now. How am I going to promote it? It doesn't do any good to have a million CDs sitting in your car. All right, then you have to think of the branding of the show. First thing you're going to have to do is come up with a name. Now, a lot of you are thinking about the name of your core business already. Your name is a big deal because your name has to represent your goals and who you are as a business. So branding, again, separate workshop, but it's a big deal. So coming up with the right name. We came up with the name Straight Shot because our agency, Reformation Productions, our tagline is Think in Straight Lines, which refers to the process where we take a business's internal thoughts and how they communicate to their audience in a straight line. So the straight made sense. It also had Straight Shot, which is a cliche, which means being honest, being transparent, giving it to you directly. All right? So that's how we came up with that name. Then the next thing we have to do is figure out, okay, what's the logo going to look like? Okay? If there's one thing I can tell you about your business, do not let Fiverr design your logo. Logos are too important. Now, if it's a side business and you don't care about it, you just need something, fine, go ahead. If you want to be successful, put thought into your logo. Coca-Cola's logo, Nike's logo, Pepsi just spent $1 million redesigning their logo 5 years ago. Okay, logos are a big deal because everybody's going to recognize who you are by your logo. So it seems like it's small, but it's not. Next, you have to figure out what your tagline is going to be and the general look and feel that you're going to have for your show. So you can see this now. We have the tagline that's in there, how marketing impacts everyday life. That's what the show is about. That's what we're going to talk about. And in the show we go through, we talk about things that you see every day. So this movie is coming out. We talk about how the marketing of that movie impacts you. This billboard, this whatever. We talk about the different aspects of a business owner's life and how marketing impacts everyday life for the people that are around them. And then there's a look and the feel. Now you think for a minute that, hey, this is a podcast, it's audio, right? If you're not doing a video show, like it's audio. What do I care about look and feel for? You have to have graphics for your show. So not only the studio decor on the inside, but you're going to have a website, other things that we talk about. You're going to have graphics for when you distribute your show that show up on your phone whenever you listen to it. So you're going to have a look and a feel. So it is going to matter. Then you have to have an intro and an outro for your show. It can be very short. It can be somewhat long. You know how you hear people come up with their catchphrase, right? Where I'm going to say, and that's how the cookie crumbles, or whatever. You have to have some sort of thing that sets you apart when people turn it on. They go, oh, that's so-and-so, right? It can be music. It can be catchphrases. It can be all of the above. You need to have some sort of intro and outro for your show that you have to think about. Now, after that, that's setup. That's before you do anything. The next thing that you do after that is per episode. First thing that you're going to have to do is make podcast show notes, which means that you have to research whatever your show is going to be about. Make notes so that you're not on air trying to wing it. because winging it is not as easy as it sounds. So, do you have to script out everything and read from a teleprompter? No. Have bulleted notes so that you know what direction you're taking your show. Otherwise, you're going to hate yourself in the editing room. So make sure that you have some sort of plan. A lot of people don't think about the fact that they think, well, I'll just go sit down in front of the microphone and I'll start talking. Have thoughts before that. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up wasting your time. So you have to do that with every show. The other thing you have to do with every show is after you have your notes, you have to go perform it and record it. So that's the next stage. Setup is done once per episode is every single show. Now, recording options. Like I said, you have to perform and then record your show. Well, one of the options that you have is you can rent a studio, just like a musician does. All right, here's a shot of ours. You need to make sure that they have, when you talk to them on the phone, the studio, everything that you're going to need. Now, that's going to vary from show to show, but you have to make sure that they have the correct amount of microphones. For example, we could hold 6 people around our table, so you can have 6 people on the show. A lot of people can only do 1, or can do 2, or can do 4. You need to make sure before you rent time that they have the ability to have what you need. You also want to make sure, do they have an engineer, or do you need to engineer the show yourself? Engineer's the guy that runs the board. Okay, so another question that you need to ask. Will they give you individual audio files, or just a mixed down stereo mix of the show? That's an important question too. What you're going to want is likely individual audio files. So each microphone has its own file, and then you compile them afterwards. Sound treatment, make sure the room doesn't sound too boomy, too roomy. Do you need to have video? Are you going to is your podcast going to be a video podcast or only audio? You could have either one, but you need to make sure that they know how to do it and that they have the capability. If they're going to do video, do they have studio lighting that will then make you look better on your video? Interchangeable set dressing. This is our show. The sign that's in the back can come down and be replaced with another show. This is the sponsor. That can come down and be replaced with another sponsor. You also have, these are mic flags, which we'll talk about in a minute. So how much changing can you do to the studio that you're renting to make it yours while you're in it? So that's all about renting a show. Your other option is to build your own. So you have rent or you have build your own. First thing that you're going to need, well, let's talk about a minimal setup. You're going to need a place to do it. Okay, so do you have an extra room in your house, in your office, wherever you're going to do it? You're going to need a table, chairs, that's basic, right? And then you're going to need, outside, after you have the place, you're going to need an audio recorder and a microphone. Even if you're just one guy, that's all you need, okay? An audio recorder and a microphone. To have a more professional setup, if you go beyond that, you're going to need to have a mixing board console that again, if you have multiple microphones, it becomes more difficult. You have to be able to mix them. This is one that is made specifically for podcasting. It can take in 4 microphones. It can take in telephone calls from your telephone. You can take in an iPad. It has little sound effects, little buttons you can push. Hoo-hoo! Whatever you want on there. So it's made for podcasting. It's a specific console or board. Headphones. Headphones are good because it makes you be able to hear the different people in an isolated way if there's multiple people in your show room. Laptop or iPad. These are good for keeping you on track of what you're doing. You'll make your notes, you'll keep them up on, I do mine on PowerPoint. So I literally make a PowerPoint so that I paste going through as I'm talking through my show. The other thing is signage. Again, this is on the more professional end. Mic flags go a long way with branding your show. It also goes a long way with that Hollywood effect when people come in there. If you're having prospective clients come in, they can look. It makes them feel like they're actually on the radio. Backdrop, like I said, if it's video or even if it's not. If you have potential clients coming in to be on your show, the atmosphere that you're building matters, even if it's just audio, because they can see it. You don't want to bring them into your garage, right? You want to show them that you're professional. Having things like this shows that you are professional even in your podcasting. Video. A lot of things you have to consider if you're going to have a video show. You have to have video capabilities. That's its own animal. It can be done in extremely simple ways though. And then of course if you're going to do video, you're going to need some lighting as well. Again, this is as you grow into a more professional setup. Minimum that you're going to need is this to get started. You're going to need a place, microphone, and a recorder. Now, after that, you recorded everything. Now you have to edit it. Well, you can outsource the editing to somebody that is skilled in editing audio or somebody that is skilled in editing video. So that is an option to you. You don't have to do it yourself. However, if you want to do it yourself, you can. If you have an audio-only podcast that you're doing, there is a program that's called Audacity. Audacity is free, and it will work just fine for your audio show. Now, if you have a Mac, GarageBand, I believe now comes with Mac, so you can use that as well. So all those programs are fine. If you're going to have a video podcast, then I would recommend Premiere Pro, which is not free. However, there's tons of tutorials on how to work it. Depending on what all you're doing with your show, it can be difficult. It can be not difficult, depending on what you're doing in the skill base that's involved. Graphics. We talked about needing graphics. You're going to need graphics for every show because every episode has its own graphic. Those graphics are necessary because the next thing that you're going to need is a distribution network. So there are several podcast hosting services that exist. Okay, there are several that are out there. What they do, this is the logo for Libsyn. They are one of the top ones. And they broadcast your podcast to the podcasting world. So they do that for you. You do not have to go individually to all these different places. They will handle that for you. You upload it to them, they send it out. They are going to require that you have a show graphic and an episode graphic. Not only one, but two. So you're going to need one that's for widescreen, in case people are watching it on their TV, and one that is square, in case people are watching it on their phone. Because when you pull up the show, on whatever platform, there's a graphic that's there, that's you, that's what that graphic is. And it changes per show. Now, your distribution network, when you set it up, they will send it to everyone, including your social media, which means you're going to have social media for your show. Not just your business, but for your show. Because they will broadcast to that as well. Also your website. They will push your shows automatically to your website. But you have to have a website for the show for them to push it to. The other thing is you can have your own app. We have an app for Straight Shot Marketing Podcast that is on the App Store where you can get it, and all of our shows are right there, again, in your pocket all the time. So you can make your very own app and you can tell people, hey, we have a podcast show. You can download the app and then they have you with them all the time. You do not have to have an app because there's lots of podcast services like Apple Podcasts, Deezer, I mean, there's tons of them that will subscribe to your feed and you can be one of many shows on there. If you have your own app, it's all you. Now, once you have your show and it's edited and you're ready to go, how are you going to market the podcast? If you build it, they will come does not work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in business. It doesn't work in podcasting. And there's lots of people that think they do. I'm going to build my so-and-so and that's it. It will work as long as you have friends and family. And then when they're gone, just being there is not good enough anymore. You have to market your show or your business. Now, one of the ways, obviously, to do that is social media. That's a little graphic of me and the co-host for Halloween on our Facebook page for the show. So you will have to have content, regular content on your social media, strategic engagement, which means going and inviting people to watch your show or listen to your show. And then obviously you have advertising. You can advertise to people that are interested in whatever your show is about, right? So you could go on Facebook to hotel owners. There's a Facebook group for hotel owners, and you can advertise specifically to those people about your show. Episode trailers. One of the things that we do is we have little teasers, just like television does when they're giving commercials for whatever show is coming on, or movies do when they're telling you, hey, this show is coming. We make episode teasers, and I'm going to show you one. So, ready?
Watch.
Check.
Goggles.
Check.
Flux capacitor. Ready?
Ready.
Get it? It's like Back to the Future.
Back to the what?
Back to the Future. You know, 88 miles per hour, 1.21 gigawatts. Great Scott!
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
All right. Well, here's a movie reference you might know.
I understood that reference.
So that has done so much to promote our show, because now people share those, because they're all little creative things. So something that you could do as well. Two of those actors are here. Say good job. So we put out those, and we actually have people that are just as excited about the promos as they are about the actual show. Cross promotion. This is another way that you can promote your show that's very popular in the podcast world. These two men both have their own podcast. He is being a guest for his show, and he is being a guest for his show, and they are recording it at the same time. So you're cross-promoting with people that have the same audience that you do. Y'all are not Generation Y, but kids see this all the time with YouTube. There's this YouTube star and this other YouTube star, and they're literally shooting the show at the same time because they each have their own channel. It's the same sort of thing. So interviewing other people to be on their show and for them to be on your show is very common. So that's another place to go, is to look at, okay, I don't have the audience. This guy I really like, he's in the same field. I'll be on his show, get his audience, and then people will become interested because whatever his audience is already listen to the podcast, right? So they'd just be adding another show to their repertoire. Next thing, podcast cards. These are, and we have some here if you want one after the seminar today. These are little business cards that I can give out to people if I want to invite them on my show. If I'm anywhere in Atlanta and I see somebody, I'm like, you would be a very interesting guest on the show, I hand them a card. It tells them what the show is so that if they don't want to be on it, they can still watch it, right? And then it tells them how to become a guest. So little business cards for your show that you strategically give out to different people in the community when you're walking around. Just like you would your business card for your main business. Email signature. Put it on everything. Put the fact that you have a show on everything. Email signature, you already have your email address, your website, your social media, add the podcast to it as well. A lot of times if you have a business, you have a podcast and your clients don't even know, right? So let them know. It's an easy way to do it. Email newsletter. Newsletters still work. We still do these. Every time that we announce a show or anything that's going on, this newsletter will go out, and it has the promo for the show. It also has a link to the episode that we just released. Right now we're doing lessons from Coca-Cola brand. It's a series that we're doing. That's what we're in the middle of right now. This one just went out last month. Website. Obviously, like I said, you have to have a website. Because when people hear about your show, they're going to want to find out more about it. This is how they're going to do it. And it's also how they're going to find all these connections to all these different places as well. So it's kind of like your hub. Basically, every relevant opportunity you can think of, just like with business, if it makes sense, do it. Get your show out there, get your show in front of other people. Now, the bottom line. How much does it cost to do all of this, right? The majority of business decisions come down to two options. Do you build or do you buy? The majority of business decisions that you will make come down to that. So let's look at both aspects. If you outsource it, you will have less time invested in doing it, but you will spend more money invested in doing it. You will have higher expertise, which means you will have less stress. If you do it yourself, you will have more time invested, but less money. So it won't cost you as much in time. You will have to develop your own skills, as opposed to hiring somebody that already has them. And that generally will bring upon you more stress. So it comes down to, like most things, this age-old question of which one of these things matters most in your own personal life. And it's different for everybody. However, this is a funny little graphic I thought was relative to this. When you're young, you have a whole bunch of time and very little money. When you're an adult, you have very little time and more money. And when you're old, you have time and money, but you no longer have the energy. So figuring out where you are in that scale and what matters to you. For me, as far as figuring out the decision of build versus buy, there's some things that's just not worth my time. My time is more valuable than whatever said thing is. So you hire somebody to do it. Okay? There's other things that I'm not going to pay that amount for, so I'll just do it, right? So you kind of have to decide what that is for yourself. The other thing to think about is the output quality. So, and you have to, and it's different for each thing. Sometimes it's I'm going to give it to them to do because they're better at it. Sometimes it's they're not as good as me, I'll just do it myself. So there's not a core answer for this. It depends on you, your skills, where you are in life, that sort of thing. But it's a decision that you will have to make. So I am going to talk about it from both sides. Pre-production. Pre-production, this is your goal setting, and you're figuring out who you are, and you're building your logos and all of that stuff. If you outsource it to someone, it's going to be between $500 and $1,500 more than likely. Okay, to get there, somebody's consultant help in helping you to build all of that stuff. If you do it yourself, it's going to take your time. However long it takes you to do it, whether you have to research books or whatever, maybe you're gifted in graphic design and you can make a logo yourself. Again, your particular situation. But if you're going to outsource it, it's going to be between $500 and $1,500 as a range. Production. If you rent a studio in Atlanta, you're going to find between $50 an hour and $250 an hour. Now the difference in that range is $50 an hour is usually a kid with his laptop, and $250 an hour is a studio that somebody built for the purpose of having a studio. So again, whatever works for you would depend on where you go. Do it yourself, you're looking at a minimum setup of about $300 for what we talked about before, the audio recorder, microphones. More professional setup is of course going to be more than $300 because you're adding to it. And it depends on what you're going to add to it, depends on how much it's going to cost. Post-production. Editing and graphics. Outsourced, top end is usually $150 an hour. So somewhere between a college student doing it and a professional doing it, $150 an hour. Or, if you do it yourself, it's the time that it takes for you to build something that's good. Distribution. Usually it's around $40 a month. Some places are a lot cheaper. This is a place to broadcast your podcast. Some places you can do $10 a month, but they won't get you as far as the one that does $40 a month. As with anything, you get what you pay for. Okay? So that's whoever's going to host your show and send it out to all the different channels. Bottom line is, DIY setup, it's going to be $300 or more. Per month, it's going to be $40 because that distribution is per month. In your time, you can get away with 3 hours at the minimum per episode or more. So that is a minimal case do-it-yourself basis of what it's going to cost. So 3 hours of your time per episode and $40 a month, and you can get away with starting with around $300. Outsourced. Outsourced is a little different. I cannot quote you every single studio that's out there to give you detailed information, but what I can do is tell you about what we do. Now, we are not, we have a podcast studio, obviously, but we are not open to the general public. So people don't call us up to rent studio space. But if you're a client of ours and you need to make a podcast, we make your podcast. So these are kind of the figures that we use with dealing with clients, just to kind of give you an idea. So if you have a business, your business is a client of the agency, and you want to make a podcast, this is kind of what those numbers look like for adding that. Now, if you talk to somebody that just has a studio, they likely won't do all of this stuff. I'm just trying to give you an idea of the cost. Setup. That is ours. We can do around $500 going up depending on what you need. With most people, if you're established business, if you know who you are, it's not going to take as much time as the $1,500. Now, if you have no idea who you are, we have to help you build your business, not just your podcast. That's a different story. Audio. If you have an audio-only podcast, $550 per episode will include the studio time and the editing of the podcast itself and all of the graphics that go involved with it as well. So the whole thing, if you have an audio, is around $550 per episode. If you have a video, that's different. Video is more complicated. It's around about $1,750 per episode to make one of those. But again, that includes everything from the studio time, editing, graphics. If you have a video, it's lower thirds, intro, outro, all that. Yes?
What's the typical length of a video?
Of a podcast episode? They range, I've seen them as short as 15 minutes. I think that's a waste of time. But most of them are generally 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Some of them go as long as an hour. Most don't go beyond that before they start breaking them up into parts. But generally between 30, 60 minutes. Show host. If you want to have a podcast, but you don't want to be on the podcast, which happens because some people are camera shy or microphone shy, as the case may be. If you have a business and you think, I want to get into podcasting because it's good for my business, but I don't want to be the one to do it, you can hire somebody else to do it for you. They would be the show host. The show host would generally run around $500 per episode as well. They will handle the show notes because they have to know what they're talking about, and they will be on-air talent for you. Now, as a business, you will have to approve whatever the notes are because it's representing your company. But you don't have to be the person on air. It's like hiring an actor, right? Somebody else that has a good rapport with people, has good microphone presence, good video presence to do that for you. Guest recruitment. If you don't want to be the person that's calling up people trying to get them to be on your show, that's something, again, that you can outsource. That's around $500 a month to get somebody to do that as well. And the time that you'll spend, if you outsource it, is anywhere from nothing to 2 hours. That's the benefit, the biggest benefit of paying for it, is you can be as involved as little as you want. Anywhere from, I don't want to see anything, up to, I just want to come in, you're going to interview me for the show, I will talk about it, and then I go away and you handle everything else. So, completely up to you with however you want to handle that. Now, when it comes to promoting, your podcast is, yes?
Guest recruitment, $500 a month.
Yes.
Is there a guarantee on how many guests you'll be able to recruit, or?
That's time. It's however much time they take. There's not really a guarantee. Usually if they devote $500 worth of time, you're going to get people to come in. But as far as, depending on what your audience is, if they're, CIOs, CEOs, very difficult to get people. there's no guarantee that you're gonna get those, because they're harder to get. Now, there are some people that will give you a guarantee depending on if your audience is housewives, because they're easier to get. So it depends on your audience. All right, promotion. Your podcast should be, like I said, it is a marketing branch of your your own business. Now, some people may want to have podcast as a business by itself. Then you have to treat it as if it's a business. But for most people that we're talking about here, we're talking about businesses that want to get into podcasting. So, how would you get the money for all of that? Well, the first thing, like I said, is your business. It's part of your marketing budget. Now, your business's marketing budget, standards are that it should be between 8 and 20% of your gross revenue for your business. This is part of that. So if you have a business and you're not the owner and you think that, hey, we should get into podcasting, you need to pitch your podcast idea as part of the marketing budget, because that's what it's going to do, is spread awareness of the main business. Now, that doesn't mean that your podcast gets to take up the whole 20%, guys. You're part of the 20%. Audience funding. Again, Patreon. Your audience, if they appreciate your content, they will sponsor you to continue content. This happens a lot with YouTube and with podcasts, where people can subscribe at any level, where they give you monthly amounts, kind of like the Georgia Public Radio does. You know, where you support Georgia Public, keep helping us continue to bring you good programming. You know, we give $10 a month. Same sort of thing, only this is for private, non-Georgia Public Broadcasting people. Sponsorship and advertising. So find businesses that have the same audience as your podcast. Yes?
Audience funding, do you need to have a certain following, a number of following before they will,
You can set it up when you have no one.
and they will?
Yeah, because what happens is when you get people, Patreon's gonna take a cut of it for providing you the service. Because they actually do the credit card processing and the charging and all of that. So it's just like, you've heard of Kickstarter? Kickstarter takes a portion of the amount that they raise. It's the same sort of thing. It's percentage based. So with sponsorship and advertising for your show, you need to think of what is another business that has the same audience as my show. Who would benefit from my show? My show is, I will pick on you because yours was fascinating. I design restaurants and hotels. Well, who would benefit from that? Well, the people that make coffee, manufacturers of coffee, manufacturers of mattresses, anybody that would be involved in selling things to a brand new hotel that starts up should sponsor his show, because their audience is the same as his. So that's what you're looking at. Who else can benefit from the fact that you built this show? Now, if you're an advertiser, you're on the other side. You're saying, who has a show that I can benefit from because they speak to my audience? Monetization. YouTube, Google owns YouTube, will pay you to run ads on your show if you have a YouTube channel. Several podcast hosts will do the same thing. So what they do is they call it monetizing. So if you have, and you have to have the numbers for this, if you have a big number in your audience, right? So many people subscribe to you, they will pay you to allow them to advertise on your show. And then you don't have to handle the advertising at all. But it's just like anybody else, they take a percentage of it. They're not going to pay you the full amount, they'll pay you something for it. It's the same as Google does. When you look at YouTube and there's those pre-roll ads that come up, or the ads that interrupt the middle of your show, that's this. The trick is to be extremely targetable in your audience, because that's what YouTube would then sell, right? So if you are targeting a certain demographic of people and they can advertise to that demographic of people, that makes you a good match. And to your point also, there's a lot of, if you look at YouTube, there's a lot of YouTube that has no picture. Well, it has a picture, it has no moving picture. It's just a still graphic and it's just audio, because people will turn that on at work and just listen to it. So you can take your podcast, put it up on YouTube without having the video aspect to it. So it's still an option.
I have a question.
Sure.
Back to your business and your clientele.
Sure.
So someone comes to you and they have an idea about a podcast that they wanna do for a particular audience. Does your business say, well, I don't think there's a market for that?
We can, yes. We do that for not just shows, but for actual businesses. I had a guy come to me with an idea the other day, and he was like, I need to know, is this something that people would buy, right? That's called doing a market analysis, and it is something that we do, where you go through and you analyze, okay, this is how many people would be in your target, this is where you should place your shop, this is where, all of that, yeah. So that's not just podcast, though, that's any business.
No, but does your business do
Yes.
that for your clientele?
Yes, the agency does that. All right, so what are some of the challenges that you will face if you decide to go on this adventure that is podcasting? The first problem you're gonna run into is scheduling your time. Dedicating time to researching your topic, because you don't wanna sound like you don't know what you're talking about on the internet, because it lives forever. So make sure that you know what you're gonna say, that you're correct in what you're going to say. That research is going to take time. Writing your show notes, writing your show. Some people still do scripts, some people do notes. That's gonna take time. And then recording it is going to take time. One of the biggest challenges is figuring out, okay, when am I going to schedule and make that time? Next thing is coordinating other people. Whenever you have to involve somebody else, if you own a business and you have employees, you already know this. Coordinating other people always throws a wrench in things. If you can just do it by yourself, you can do it at home in bed in your slippers, right? But if you have a co-host, if you're having guests to come on, you have all those other people's time that you have to manage in addition to yours. So a lot of times we will invite people on the show and we're like, we'd like you to come on the show this day, and they can't do it that day. Well, if you want them, then you have to change your schedule to fit theirs, just like you do with any other business meeting. So that's something that's challenging as well. Studios, the same thing. I want to record my show on Thursday. Well, they don't have a spot open on Thursday. You have to wait until Tuesday of next week. Publishing on time. In order to become well known to people as a show, you need to publish your show at the same time every time. So if it's monthly, if it's weekly, if it's bi-weekly, you need to do it every Monday at 10 o'clock. That, depending on how long it takes you and how difficult, how many demons you've had to slaughter with making your show, that time can become a challenge. So publishing it on time with all of your other business, right? So we have an agency, we run the agency, and then we have to make time to do the show, yeah.
How often do y'all, have y'all podcast?
Ours comes out every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks?
About. Unless there's client work that comes in front of it, which is why this is up here. So if we publish, generally we publish every 2 weeks. However, if I'm in the middle of something that a client is paying me to do, it becomes more important than putting this out. And most of my audience understands that because I will tell them that in the show. So transparency is really important, yeah.
So around every 2 weeks, around the same time?
Same day, same time.
Same day, same. Okay.
Now, the next thing that's on here is speed and frequency. YouTubers make it really difficult for business owners because YouTubers put out something every day, every other day, every week. Really difficult to keep up with that as a business and still be professional. Because YouTubers turn on their webcam and they just talk to people and they don't have to worry about carrying a brand on their back. Okay? So keeping up with their frequency is hard. We try to do every 2 weeks, and it's not easy for us to do with all the research that goes in the show, the promos that we do for the show, the scheduling of the guests to come on the show. That's a quick time frame. It can be done if you get ahead of it. We try to run, it's like I told you before, this episode that we're doing today will not be on this month because we have to work ahead in order to maintain the schedule. Otherwise, we'd be going, is it ready yet? No. Is it ready yet? No. That becomes really stressful. So, yeah, so you have to kind of get ahead of it. And you have to figure out what's comfortable for you. If you have enough time and your format is that where you can shoot one and put it out every other day, great. There's a lot of people that have shows that come out once a week, 3 times a week, whatever frequency is good for you, but need to find one that you can stick with. So that again goes into your goals in your set. But it's a challenge. Focus. One of the problems that you will have when you go to make your show is you have too many ideas. And you try to do everything at once. You need to focus your ideas, which is one of the reasons why you write them down. So you have your notes, you stay on track, you stay with whatever this show is about, this thing. Stay with this thing, don't get into this. This is a different show. Don't try to bring it into the same show. The other is the anxiety and fear that comes out of, oh my God, I don't have any ideas. This is a common author problem, writer's block, right? You'll never come up with, I've run out of ideas for my show. I've run out of guests. I've run out of topics. That stress is there, and it's a real thing. But if you slow down, calm down most of the time, there's tons of ideas. There really is. You just have to think outside the box. You may have to ask other people, come up with things. But it is a challenge that people face. Next one is quality. Skills. If you do it on your own, coming out with a quality product can be a challenge. Because you have to clean, even if it's audio, you do what's called cleanup. What that means is every time you go or or like or any of that, you cut that stuff out. Because it doesn't make you sound good when you're recorded. Recording things is like a magnifying glass. So what you can get away with saying in person, you cannot get away with saying on tape. Not that anybody uses tape anymore, I get it. But one of the things that you do is clean up your audio and making sure you know how to do that and how to edit it. A lot of times when you have your show, you'll say, well, we were going along in conversation, and then we went down this rabbit trail, and then we continued with the conversation. Well, maybe with your edit, you want to take this and put it back over here. You have to know how to structure, just like the news does, broadcast in the evening. Creativity is another thing. Being creative with your show and what are you going to do. There's lots of things that you can do if you're creative enough to do them. So having the skills to edit on your own is the thing. The other thing with quality is understanding that mistakes happen. They do. Whether it's technology fails or human error. The show, ironically, the show that we have up right now that we put up last week has a huge technical error in it. The main microphone did not work. So when you listen to it on the secondary microphone, there is too much reverb in the room. Will the audience know that? Will they not know that? I don't know, but we couldn't re-record the show. Stuff like that happens. Next week's will be a lot better because the microphone will be working. But you have to understand stuff like that happens. You can't blow a fuse. It's just part of a reality. Monetizing. You have to have the numbers before you can monetize. If you want to monetize with YouTube, there's a threshold you have to meet. If you want to monetize with anyone, you have to have a certain number or it's not worth their time to monetize you, which is confusing. You have to make numbers to make money. You have to make money to make numbers. It's interesting. But you also have to understand that there's multiple different ways to monetize your show, which we went over a lot of those today. So kind of what are those different ways and how can you plug into what those are? Outsourcing. Challenges that come with outsourcing is delegating. Some people have a really hard time delegating, taking their hands off the wheel, letting somebody else do it. The other issue was funding. You know, hiring somebody else to do it obviously costs money. So that's the other challenge there. So the question becomes, after we talked about all of this, are you up to the challenge? Do you still want to get into podcasting? It's really, I went into extreme detail. It's really relatively simple, and it doesn't cost a lot as far as business marketing is concerned, if you know how much business marketing costs. You have in-depth knowledge now of how the business part of it works. Now, Q&A, questions? Who wants to go first? Go ahead.
I had to run a call, so I had to step out.
Snooze, you lose. Too bad.
Did you discuss the streaming, live streaming?
No, I discussed distribution. That's where I had put you off before. You can have a live show that is possible. Facebook does live, Instagram does live, and there's platforms where you can literally stream to, YouTube does live, where you can go live to multiple places all at the same time. There is more setup costs to be able to do that. But yes, that is something that you can do. And then you can also record that, because we've done that. We've done a live show, recorded it, then edited the recorded live show to where, because live you're not going to be as good as when you're edited. So then we edited it and then put that out. Yes. Well, keep going.
Do y'all use a particular one of those, like, Facebook or whatever, when you do live?
We do all of them.
You do all of them, okay.
Yep.
Well, having a podcast, as far as implementing like music or other people's content, what's the do's and don'ts in that?
Generally speaking, if you don't own it, don't use it.
Okay.
Does everybody do that? No. But you can get shut down. There are ways around it, as YouTubers have showed us. Generally speaking, the worst thing they're going to do is tell you to stop or block it. Usually you won't get sued. You can and have to pay a bunch of money. But generally speaking, for a podcast or a TV show that's not on TV, you won't have that, because you're not making. They know you don't make a lot of money. So coming after you is not going to get them a whole lot. So, and by a whole lot, I mean millions.
Right.
However, if you make a show that has Star Wars theme in it, and all of a sudden you make millions of dollars, they will come after you at that point. Well, you gotta go in order. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a bigger challenge because I am with a friend that is in Miami and it has a blog similar
Mhm.
to mine, and we want to do something together, like
Okay.
a podcast. How we can record a podcast not
You
being
can.
in the same
You can.
way?
There are services where you can have remote guests or co-host in your case. Are you talking about doing video or audio only?
Audio.
Audio only is easier. It's less technical. But there are services that are out there that you can have somebody, their audio comes into your recorder and you record them. Now the quality of that is where it becomes difficult, and that's an additional expense. The good ones, which I don't have the names of right now, but if you contact me afterwards, I can share them with you. There are several where the audio quality comes in just as good as if they were sitting in a room, if your internet connection is good enough. The other thing that you can do is there's several recorders that have Bluetooth, and they can call your phone and you can record the Bluetooth so that you still have the signal from them, but it is going to sound like they're on a phone as opposed to in the room. The other option that you have is you can record it, they can record it, then they can email you their version and you can match it up. And the thing, like we're saying, if you record it and then they record it, you have their tinny telephone sounding voice, but you can use that, and when they send you the new one, you can replace that with their good audio.
Okay.
And then it sounds like you're in the room. Be creative,
Okay.
basically.
If I send you an email, could you send me a list of examples of podcasts and technology,
Sure.
engineering, stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah. Or you could just go on your phone to Apple Podcasts and type in technology, and they'll all pop up just like that. The ones that are on Apple Podcasts, yes.
What are the advantages, disadvantages, easiness of going from a radio show that's Facebook Live through the radio station and through the business and the business's Facebook page? Is there anything you can do when doing a podcast that would focus more on an international audience? And maybe using the same topics or editing the audio?
Let me try to clarify that I understand. You have a radio show that is on the radio, and it's also being broadcast on Facebook Live.
Through the radio stations on
Through the radios.
Facebook and through the businesses' Facebook.
Okay.
So filtering in a podcast.
What you would do is you would take that content, record the content live, and then edit it up and repurpose it as a podcast.
Okay, can you run that by me again?
Record the broadcast wherever it's coming from, and then edit it as is necessary to fit a podcast format, and then repurpose it. Because if it's being done from a radio station, your audio quality is already good, and they're already making it for broadcast. So you just have to edit what they've already done again, make sure you have their permission or that it's you. You can't just record off the radio and then do that, because that's you're stealing content. But if it's yours, if you're the one on the radio or they're paying you to do it, then you can definitely repurpose what they already have. Anybody else?
Where's your studio at? What are y'all?
We are in Sugar Hill, Beaufort area in Gwinnett County.
How long you been doing it?
Forever. No. How long have we been doing the podcast itself? Only for a little over a year.
And y'all been doing other businesses podcasts for
Yes.
the same thing?
Yep. Started off with Business Radio X that I mentioned in here. I actually, they had me as a guest on their show. I've been a guest on their show multiple times. Back when I thought of podcasting, what are you ever going to do with a podcast, right? And then they had me build out the video capabilities of their studio because they didn't know how to do it. So I came in and made it where they could shoot video. And since then, iPhones and so forth have taken off, and podcasting has taken off. And then I went, I just taught them how to do it. I should probably do it too. And that's kind of how that, because again, podcasting, I was ignoring it, same as everybody else for years. Same as social media. People ignore social media too.
You talk about I guess, be successful with podcasting, you need to be in it a number of years.
It takes a while to build an audience.
What's a while? Like businesses, you need about 5 years to say you're doing okay, right? So
It
with
shouldn't take,
podcasts-
there's some people, it depends on your content, how charismatic you are, and how big your existing audience is. I have known some people that have just jumped in 6 months and they're doing extremely well. Other people, it's taken 6 years. So again, everything depends on the creativity of your content and how much value your content is going to bring to your audience. One of the things that I do in our shows is I share a lot of business tips with business owners for free. That consultation, people, they pay me to give them that. So I'm offering, because that's valuable to my audience. So I give them that information, and that is what makes the show grow, because they're getting value. Which is another thing. Don't build a show and it's all by me, because nobody cares. You have to give value to whoever your audience is. If you're not giving value, you're not going to be on the air very long. Anything else?
All right. And then Zach, you can ask Zachary, he'll be here a little bit if you have a question you want to ask.
Yes.
Dan. Round of applause for Zachary. Excellent.
This will be up on engineeringyoursuccess.com and on the podcast. If you want notification when it's up, you can text the word Reformation to 90210. You'll get a notification on your phone, or you can just hang out with us on social media and you'll find out when it's up.